One day, Daxos and Elspeth were traveling through fields on their way toward Melitus. Daxos, perhaps slightly jealous, but also awed by Elspeth's planeswalking spark, said, "Elspeth, my love, you have such power I could only dream of. I believe you have the power to rival Heliod himself. Imagine what good you could do with such a powerful ability to walk between planes." To which Elspeth replied, "It is useful, yes, but I am not all-powerful. My dear Daxos, you should not speak so about Heliod. You know this as well as I." Daxos bobbed his head up and down sheepishly. "Yes, you are of course right. I just think it's amazing. I think you're amazing, my lovely planeswalker." And he held her face in his hands. Elspeth's face turned austere though, perhaps even a little grave, and she asked, "You would call me a planeswalker?" She shook her head knowingly and pointed to an antelope. Now that's a planeswalker. Welcome to the Uncommon Commander. My name's Ryan, and it's nice to meet ya. Today we're building a Plainswalker deck, but don't call it Superfriends, it's not that kind of plane. Right, so Plainswalking. When people think of Plainswalkers in mono white, they think of Ajani or Elspeth. Not me, though. I think of Graceful Antelope, or I think of our secret commander, Aysen Highway. That's right, today's commander isn't a legal commander due to the fact that it's an enchantment, not a creature, and it's not legendary. But let's not let such petty details stand in our way. Aysen Highway is a 6-mana white enchantment that says, all white creatures gain Plainswalk. Obviously, since white is the most popular color in EDH, we're going to be able to swing on people with impunity with this baby on the field. Of course, this is a secret commander, which means it's only going to be allowed in R99. Because of that, we need to choose an actual commander. For this deck, I had a few options open to me. I considered Krovak's Ascendant Hero, as he is clearly walking, but it's not across a plane. Looks more like a swamp, so we're not using him. I also considered Rick, Steadfast Leader, because how did he get into MTG if not through planeswalking? Through corporate pressure to expand the player base while milking the whales, you say? I don't know, that sounds far-fetched, but I guess we won't use him. In the end, I decided to shoot for utility and went with 8.5 Tails. It's a 2-mana legendary Fox Cleric creature with a 2/2 body that has 2 abilities. Those say, pay 1 and a white. Target permanent you control gains protection from white until the end of the turn. And pay 1 generic mana. Target spell or permanent becomes white until the end of the turn. This combination of abilities lets us protect our permanents from most spells and creatures and gives some added evasion as long as we can turn our opponent's creatures white. Mostly it's here to protect Aysen Highway though. Alright, and before going on, at this time I would like to mention that there are several ways to help support this channel if you're enjoying the content here. First up is TCG Player. If you're planning on buying cards anyway, please consider using my affiliate links in the video description. Second, we have Patreon. That is the most direct way to support and keep this channel running. Patrons get early access to deck lists, and there's even a Discord server set up so you can talk about or play MTG with other patrons and myself. And finally, we have the like and subscribe buttons. They help grow the channel, keep you notified of my content, and best of all, they're free. Now then, let's talk about the 99. Ramp. I always start with ramp, don't I? Well, today I'll be starting with ramp. And since I'm trying my best to keep the color cost of this deck down, most of our ramp is going to be mana rocks. Those are Everflowing Chalice, Soul Ring, Marble Diamond, Mindstone, Prismatic Lens, Thunder Totem, and Hedron Archive. Darksteel Ingot and Skyclave Relic are indestructible, while Bonder's Ornament and Magnifying Glass give some expensive but much needed card draw. A ramp that isn't mana rocks are Goldmere, Burnished Heart, Oketra's Monument, and Legion's Landing. Legion's Landing won't actually ramp you until you attack with at least 3 creatures. Once you do that, it'll turn into Adanto, the First Fort, which is a land that taps for white mana. It can also create 1/1 vampire tokens with lifelink, or should I call them Plainswalker tokens. Now that we've got the mana to cast things, let's talk about our secret commander again, Aysen Highway. We need to get this thing on the battlefield. The easiest way to do that is to tutor, and luckily white is pretty good at tutoring for enchantments. In this deck we have Enlightened Tutor, making up about 30% of the cost of this deck, Idyllic Tutor, Lost Oromancers, and Plea for Guidance. But that's only half the equation, really. We also need our opponents to actually have planes, or else our creatures can't Plainswalk. We have 3 cards that can help with that, and those are Mystic Compass, which turns a target land into the basic land type of your choice until the end of the turn, Graceful Antelope, which turns a target land into a plains until the antelope leaves play, and Gauntlets of Chaos, which lets you swap a land with an opponent. To find these, we have yet another tutor, and this one is named Skyship Weatherlight. Perhaps you've heard of it. Once our white creatures are unblockable, we'll want to attack with them, so it makes sense to have a bunch of creatures with attack and damage triggers. Let's begin with the token creating triggers. We have Hazda Marshal, Launch the Fleet, Militia's Pride, Precinct Captain, Keeper of the Accord, which isn't actually an attack trigger but does create tokens, Leonin Warleader, Silverwing Squadron, and Parhelion II. I personally really like the way the Silverwing Squadron scales with the table. God help your table if you end up with more than 4 players. And then looking at Parhelion, well, that one is expensive, but if it's out for even just 2 attacks, it'll do some serious work. Be sure to protect it with 8.5 tails if necessary. With all the little white weenies we're making, it's nice to have some stuff to buff them. To this purpose, I've slotted in Consul's Lieutenant and Piana Nomad Captain. If you decide you really like this effect, Soltari Champion does this also, and it even has Shadow, but it isn't as pretty as the other 2. Next, I'd like to talk about removal. First up, we have the instants and sorceries, Declaration in Stone, Disenchant, and Oblation. We then have creature-based removal in Soltari Visionary, Bishop of Binding, and Cavalier of Dawn. Finally, we have one card that isn't really removal, but it does interrupt our opponent's plans in concert with 8.5 tails. That card is Story Circle. When it enters play, choose white. Now use your commander to turn whatever deals you damage white, and activate Story Circle. Pretty good protection and disruption. We also have the board wipes, Martial Coup, which will leave white token creatures on your board, Settle the Wreckage, Sunblast Angel, and the creature version of Settle the Wreckage, Angel of the Dire Hour. These are all one-sided in their own ways, and the last 2 are fairly good beaters. Now we're on to our card advantage. This will be broken up into 2 parts. Cards that put cards into our hand from our library, colloquially known as card draw, and cards that pull cards out of our graveyard, known either as reanimation or recursion. We'll start with card draw. Those are Inheritance, Skull Clamp, Mask of Memory, Rogue's Gloves, Pursuit of Knowledge, Mind's Eye, Lore Seeker's Stone, and Sandstone Oracle, one of the very few non-white creatures in this deck. Oh, and something to note with that first card, Inheritance, is that it doesn't require one of your creatures to die, just any creature. This can sit around as a little 1-mana enchantment for a long time, and you'll get plenty of chances to benefit from it. Our reanimation and recursion cards are Tragic Poet, Brought Back, Mine Excavation, Oromancer, Faith's Reward, and Ameria Shepherd. If it isn't obvious by how many of these can return an enchantment, I'm a little bit scared of somebody blowing up Aysen Highway. Still, a lot of these also target other permanent types as well, and they'll all at least have a little utility in each game. Now we're on to the most important part of every deck, except those ones with a bunch of Moxen and Mana Crypts in them. Land cards. Our utility lands will be Buried Ruin, Encroaching Wastes, Ghost Quarter, Inventor's Fair, because we didn't have enough tutors, Memorial to Glory, and Rogue's Passage. Pulling a different sort of utility duty are Myriad Landscape, Desert of the True, and Drifting Meadow. The first 2 of those will thin your deck and ramp you, and the other 2 have Cycling. Finally, our basic lands are 26 planes. Dang, look at all those planes. I could walk all over them. Alright, we've made it through 95 cards of this deck, which means we're on to our final segment. In this segment, I'm going to list 5 cards in some particular order, counting them down from 5 to 1. It may sound crazy, but this segment is called The Final Countdown! Today's Final Countdown features the 5 most powerful effects in the deck. Without further ado, let's get into it. At number 5, we have a great good stuff card from Mono White for Go Wide Strategies, which means that it must be Cathar's Crusade. And it is! This puppy is a 5-mana removal magnet that will give your creatures each a counter whenever a creature enters the battlefield. If two enter at the same time, they see each other and both of them get 2 counters. Combined with our token generators, this will be juicy, so keep a few mana on hand to protect it with 8.5 tails. At number 4, we have the very well-known, somewhat anticlimactic selection of Hero of Bladehold. What can I say about Hero of Bladehold that hasn't already been said by somebody smarter? Nothing, so I'll just copy them. She has Battlecry, and creates 2 white soldiers every time she attacks. She will turn your army of little tokens into a Mirren death machine, and she'll look amazing doing it. God damn you, Hero Bladehold, you magnificent bastard. For number 3, I'm going to give you a list of instructions, and those instructions contain the number 3 card. Think of them as directions, like when making a delicious cake. Step 1, cast Pentarch Paladin. Step 2, choose the color white. Step 3, pay a mana into 8.5 tails to turn a thing white. Step 4, destroy the thing. Wizards of the Coast rightly got a lot of crap when they released our number 2 card, Linden, the Steadfast Queen. She was yet another example of Wizards neglecting white, giving them the worst card of a cycle, and she also makes a terrible commander. I completely agree with that. But in a mono-white token deck, she also forces your opponents to use an alternate win condition, because they're never going to run you out of life. And speaking of alternate win conditions, at number 1, we have ours. Angel of Destiny will make it so that your opponents and you gain life whenever it deals damage. That sounds bad, but if you finish up a turn with 65 or more life, someone else loses the game. Congratulations, you just won by out-life gaining your opponent. How perfectly mono-white of you. Okay, you jank appreciators. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, even though those requests are annoying to hear every time. A couple of pieces of news as well here. I've added more tiers to the Patreon, including one that gives you access to a Discord server that I've set up to bring the patron community together. You can play games there, talk MTG, listen to music, talk about whatever. You can message me there too. It's easier and quicker to reach me there than most places. Also, I've got another jank deck coming. Mono Black Flicker. Should be fun. Normally, I leave you with a joke or a poem or some kind of crap like that. Today's poem goes like this. Bye.